Very, very warm welcome to you all around the world. And thank you so much for joining us for another Action for Happiness event. I'm really excited about today's conversation and delighted to be welcoming here the fantastic inspiration, author, activist, speaker, Julie Lythcott-Haims. Julie, it's lovely to have you with us.
Let me unmute myself and reveal myself. Mark, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your amazing community. Rachel, thank you on the production side. I am so excited for this next hour.
Me too, and it's lovely as always to see so many hundreds of people welcoming each other from all around the world on the chat. And as always, folks, we're really looking forward to your contributions this evening, to hear your reflections. As always, we'll be keeping it kind and constructive in the chat. And also, Julie and I will be encouraging you at certain points in this conversation to share your responses and to really get involved. We've also got a chance to put some of your questions to Julie later in the event, so please do use the Q&A function. But we're going to start with a sort of open conversation where I'm really hoping and excited about exploring some of the fantastic work that Julie has been doing, which I found really inspiring, and I know you will too. So thank you for being here and looking forward to this next hour together. Julie, I guess some people in this audience may not be familiar with you and your work and your background. Maybe you could start by saying a bit about your why and what brings you here this evening.
Absolutely, Mark. Happy to do that. Lovely to see some folks here from the USA in the chat, from my home state here in California. Wonderful to see folks from around the world. This is truly extraordinary. It's only 11 in the morning for me, and you're getting my day going with all of this juicy energy of humans, which is what I love and what I try to be about, and what I, of course, and we all have been deprived of for so long. So this is really feeling good. I see you. I see all of you. It's great. I am 53 years old. I am a Black biracial woman. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was born to people who transgressed the rules of society by daring to fall in love, by daring to marry, and by daring to bring a child, me, into the world. My father was an African-American man, dark-skinned, tall, handsome. My mother is an 82-year-old, I'm getting emotional because of what I'm about to say, an 82-year-old white British woman. My mother is from Yorkshire, England, a small town called Rye Hill, near Barnsley, near Wakefield, near Sheffield. Some of you know that area, I know. So I come from an African-American man and a white British woman who met in West Africa in the early 60s and dared to be in love and to marry and have me in a time when that was to transgress the rules in much of society. I was born to people who broke the rules. My own existence was not positively contemplated by many, right? To be a mixed race person then in 1967 was inherently to be out of bounds, Mark. And as I've looked back on my why, which is to help humans thrive, to help humans remove whatever obstacles are within them that prevent them from thriving, and to also help them address the external obstacles. My why, I think, is I was that kid who learned from the looks of strangers on their face as they regarded me and my beautiful Black daddy. I learned that I was transgressive, that I was problematic. And then when I went on to not be treated with kindness and dignity by children and teachers and strangers and employers, I think that further cemented in me the imperative that we do treat everybody as if they do matter, because we all do matter. But of course, we've constructed a human society where at a practical level, we don't all matter. So I think my why emanates from really the fact that my parents chose to dare to fall in love. And I think I'm here for daring, and I'm here to be a bit transgressive in support of all of us ultimately thriving.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And we've chosen quite an ambitious topic for today's event, how to live better. And you've already talked about your passion in helping people thrive, but you've referred, I think, both to the sort of inner aspect of that, but also the fact that, there were many challenges around us. And of course, systemic racism and prejudice and lack of diversity and inclusion is one of the many challenges our world faces. And so as many of us look around, we feel a bit hopeless, I guess, around some of the challenges we face. And yet also, I think many in this community have a deep sense that things can be better and are getting better in some ways, and that there is lots to be hopeful for. And also that there's some things that we can do. That's the mission behind Action for Happiness. Maybe you could say a little bit about your theory of change, how, to the extent that we can really play a part in making a better world.
Absolutely. So my theory of change is at the individual level. Many other people focus on more macro things like systemic change and voting for the right people and spending money on the right things and enacting the right policies and laws. And I agree with all of that. That is all important. But in terms of what I do in my work, I really believe in what can happen when we are engaged with an individual or a small set of folks and really lean into our ourselves as humans. So before I go any farther, I do want to offer everybody who's here, and just the numbers keep growing. It's so delightful. I want you to know that we, Mark and I, we're here for you right now. And we hope that you are feeling comfortable and you have a beverage of your choice, whatever is appropriate given the time of day, and you're in a comfortable chair, because this is meant to be nourishing for you. And as we speak, I want to invite you to be curious about what comes up for you in response to this. Okay, our bodies give us clues about how we're feeling before our brains can register what the feeling is called. So your palms might get sweaty, your tongue might go dry, you might get a weird feeling up the back of your neck, your knee might start to bounce. I'm not trying to say we're going to have scary conversations, but whatever it is, if your body offers a response, see if you can be mindful, see if you can notice it and say to yourself, wow, I'm feeling something. It might be like, yes, I agree with her, or like, what? Whatever it is, it's valid. It matters. Take a little note. Maybe it'll inform a question that you'll ask, or you'll take it out into your tonight or into your tomorrow or the remainder of this week. So, given that I care about individuals, I have had to do a massive reframe with the pandemic, because the pandemic, as we all know, has been all about what we cannot do. We can't go here. We can't behave this way, right? We can't go on with life as normal. And I finally, in the probably 3 months in, realized I was able to achieve a massive reframe in my own psyche from what I can't do to what I can do. And I really was able to achieve that reframe on a long drive in nature on Mother's Day with my then 19-year-old daughter. And it really was an eye-opener for us. I was like, okay, but we can be in charge of how we show up in every moment with humans. We can be in charge of whether we look somebody in the eye, even across the Ethernet assisted miles, whether we look someone in the eye, whether we offer a smile, whether we offer a phrase of kindness, whether we speak with respect. These very small things that don't cost a pound, a dollar, a euro, they cost nothing, right? This is the tremendous capacity we have in every moment to decide, I can treat this human who I'm with dignity and kindness. And in so doing, make their day better. And in so doing, make my day better. And in so doing, make the day of anybody who watched this little act of kindness, it'll inspire them to do the same. This small action can have a ripple effect, a butterfly effect that can really improve the world. And so that's what I'm interested in. What can each of us do when we wake up every day with the tools we already have embedded within our spirit? What can we do? And it turns out to be a lot.
Well, I completely agree with that. And I'm really galvanized and inspired to hear you say it so articulately. And it's very much linked to the message of your latest book. And I know you've written a number of great books, but Your Turn is the latest, How to Be an Adult. And maybe you could wave it, because I don't have a copy with me right here, right now. I love this, the whole message behind this. Maybe you could say a little bit about who this is aimed at and some of the key ideas behind it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Your Turn is my newest book. It's funny. This is where the American English and the British English come into play. I say your turn, how to be an adult. But I know when I'm with you, and I just heard you say it, it's how to be an adult. And isn't it funny how we speak this same language so differently at times? And believe me, of course, with my family, my mother's entire family from birth are still in England throughout the country. She's the only one to have left. So I have a lot of British relatives, and I chuckle at how differently we speak our common language. Okay, so Your Turn, how to be an adult, is my compassionate beckoning to anyone who's like, I don't want to adult. Adulting is hard. Adulting is scary. It's me compassionately saying, yep, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it is. I understand. And yet you gotta, because adulting is just the phase of life you enter if you survive childhood. Adulting is you survive childhood and it's everything you are until you die. And we hope it's a sweet set of decades where you're not only healthy and supporting yourself, but you know yourself so truly that you are actually leading the life your spirit, your soul desires. And I can tell you at 53, having done so much work to get myself to clarity around who I am and who I am not, and what I want and what I do not want, and to stop looking to others to for their approval, but to find it within myself. I can tell you my prayer in an a-religious or religious sense, in a universe sense or God sense, my prayer is, please let me live long enough now that I have found myself. And it is that kind of concept that infuses this book. This book is practical: self-care, money, how to be successful at work, how to be in relationship, how to deal when bad things happen. But the root of it is resting upon this Mary Oliver poem, The Summer Day. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with this one wild and precious life? And in conceiving of this book, Mark, the last thing I'll say is, I'm a woman of color. I am used to books being written and examples being given of white folks. Straight, white, middle-class, educated people tend to be the examples that authors come up with. Or they'll write about people and they'll say, this person, this person, this person, this person who is Black. And we're all meant to just know that persons A, B, and C must be normal, air quotes, white. I don't write that way. I write books that try to contemplate readers of every background, racially, genderly, in terms of sexual orientation, religion or non, education or not, mental health status, learning differences, ways of being. I have written this book with examples that pull from across the widest swath of humanity that I could summon to put in this book. And that is my way of saying, differently than I might in a different context, we all matter. And in order for us all to matter, if you write a book on a phase of life all humans go through, you darn well better try to have all humans in mind.
Very well said. Thank you. And I've heard you in talking about some of the great messages from the how to live well. You mentioned 5 particular points that you were trying to share with people from this book, which I found really helpful. Maybe you could take us through some of those in whatever order seems most natural to you.
Absolutely. It was my most recent iteration here. The book is new-ish, and I'm still figuring out how to talk about it, and it depends on the audience. Like, all of you are adults here, I'm presuming. Of course, that term is very much open to definition, but the other day I was speaking to kids. I was speaking to grade 9 through 12 here in the US, which I think for you guys in the UK is 3rd form, 4th, 5th, 6th kind of age 14, 15 to 18. And these were the 5 takeaways I had for them about what really matters to lead a meaningful, rewarding life. Number 1, you got to learn to think and do for yourself. You go from being a little toddler who's fed mashed up peas on tiny spoons to being this freestanding, self-actualizing, independent human. And it doesn't magically happen on your 18th or 21st or 25th or 29th birthday. It happens gradually over time. And I want young people to hunger to be doing more thinking and doing for themselves. Number 2, I say, try hard. This is my reframe of just do your best, honey. All we ask is that you do your best, because too many young people, at least in my country, are constantly told, just do your best, as if that's a small endeavor. Just do your best means only always do your best. And I tell young people, none of the grownups in your life are only always doing our best. What we're trying to say when we say just do your best is, hey, kid, try hard. Hey, kid, effort matters. Hey, kid, we need to know that when you get knocked down, you can lick your wounds, but then get back up again. So that's number 2. Number 3 is notice the noises in your own head, which are the voices of the other people, of other people's expectations. I call it a cacophony. It's so loud. What your parents expect and approve of and need you to be and do, what your extended family wants, what your friends value, what society values. That is noise in our heads as grownups and for kids too. And I say, be aware of that, shove it to the side and ask yourself, what do I want? What would I do if it was just up to me? What would I choose? Yep. The older we get, the more we can give ourselves permission to heed that voice. Number 4, I say, know thyself, know yourself, and love that self. Your differences, your disabilities, your diagnoses or lack thereof, your conditions, your situations, your identities. These are all things we carry. These are aspects of us, sometimes burdensome. And yet when we can accept those things, we can say, yep, this is who I am. This is what I got. Okay. When you love that self, you belong everywhere because you take that self with you wherever you go. And number 5, I say, kindness is everything. And we've already talked about that. So I won't rehash for you what I told the kids about kindness, but those are my 5 things.
That's lovely. Thank you. I found that really helpful, Julianne. And so it's sort of thinking and doing for ourselves, trying hard, recognizing that perfection, I guess, is just impossible. We can only do what we can. Noticing the voices, I think that's really wise. Knowing yourself and loving yourself, and then kindness, which is at the very heart of, I know, the mission of most of us in this community. So that's a really lovely practical example of what's in your latest work. But I loved how you brought that. I think it was a Mary Oliver poem or quote about this. What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? In a moment, I'd love us to turn to the audience and actually perhaps ask them to share a little bit about some of what they're working on in their lives. I always find it so lovely to hear what people say, but maybe you could help frame that for us. And what kind of way should we think about this question for ourselves? And perhaps we can ask people to respond on the chat.
Yeah. So it's Mary Oliver, The Summer Day. And this is just one line from that poem. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I emphasize your because it is yours, nobody else's. That is, you are not a project of your parents. You are not a pet of theirs on a leash being marched down the path of life toward the destination they desire or approve. You're not the evidence of anybody else's worth. This is your life. It is also your one life. Until we get evidence, clear evidence to the contrary, well, this is all there is. This is it. It's happening now. Your one wild and precious life. Wild as in untamed, as in to be discovered, to be different than everything else, not according to plan necessarily. Like it's wild. It is underway. It is becoming. And then precious. And I think for me, that means rare, finite, beautiful, to be cherished. So this line from this poem really holds a lot. And I think then it begs the question, well, why can't you? Why can't you lead your one wild and precious life? And in the hinge of this book, I call it the middle-ish chapter. It's about getting unstuck from whatever's preventing you. And often it's, whose approval do you seek? Whose judgment do you fear? What are you trying to do with your life in furtherance of some external definition of success? Yet there's a kernel of you that knows, wait a minute. I was always good at this. Why are you no longer doing the things you were always good at? Why have you accepted society's definition that, oh, you got to do this, one of these 5 careers in order to be good enough? I'm here to take a huge hammer to that and say the career that is right is the career that brings you joy, that you're good at and you love. You got to not only be good at it, because if you're only good at it, you don't love it, you'll feel like a drone in your own life, waiting for your life to happen. All right. And if you're just good at, if you just love it and aren't good at it, it's probably not going to be your career. It might be what you do as a hobby. So these are some of the prompts that I would give you. And again, I've asked you what's coming up for you as we chat. Your body is giving you some thoughts right now. Your mind is, and that's where you need to look for the answers.
I'm already seeing some lovely sort of comments in the chat. Be the best version of myself, explore life, the earth, the potential of others, my own boundaries. So maybe if you haven't already shared something and you'd like to, maybe my synopsis of what Julie's just said is, what are you working on to be more you? Or what would you like to work on to be a bit more you, perhaps to let go of some of those expectations of others? So let's have a look at what's coming up. So hobbies, to keep swimming, to do nursing, to understand what makes me happy, to figure out why I exist, to enjoy retirement, to have an inquiring mind, to work on being enough, to find joy in the journey, to walk in nature, to know my true self, to be kinder and compassionate, self-care, to resonate with nature, to never be bitter, to learn from difficult times, to enjoy learning Spanish, to enjoy sharing yoga, to plant vegetables, to be not defined by my age, to be in love. I mean, there are many more here, but I'm feeling quite a warm feeling reading that. How does that resonate with you, Julie?
Well, as I've said, and as I hope is clear, I love humans so much. And so I'm having a bit of a moment right now of just, I can't believe we're all here together with technology across the countries and continents and over the oceans and the time zones. I'm just having a bit of a moment, because what we're getting here is the juice, the delicious juice that is human interaction. And it's so beautiful. It's actually bringing tears to my voice and to my eyes. And I want you to know that if you were in my house, Mark and Rachel and everybody, if we could all gather in my backyard, and we are right now in a tiny little outdoor office, 96 square feet in my backyard in California, if we were to go out the door to my fire pit, sit in an Adirondack chair, I would ask you this in person. I would say, as a preface, I would say, y'all, I am here to learn and grow until I take my last breath, because I know that's what it means to live. I'm not trying to be perfect and then coast. I'm trying to learn and grow every day I've got. And then I would say to you, so if you'll accept that as a premise, if we can go with that, what are you working on right now? And I would say, as an example, I work on making room for introverts because I'm an extrovert, as you can tell. I can fill the hour. And I have to deliberately be conscious of that, try to be respectful of the other people around me, so that I make room and make quiet space so that introverts can feel that the door has been opened for them. So I would offer that, and then people would go around and share. And once, Mark, I got a handwritten thank you note from a guy who was the partner of the person I'd invited. He sent me a handwritten thank you note to say, I have never had a conversation like this. And it just brought me such delight, because I thought, yeah, it's evidence that the simplest questions are often the most profound. And when we can be vulnerable and say, you know what I'm working on? I'm improving my relationship with my mother. That's another thing I'm working on. I'm trying to get better at being in relationship with my mother. And to be vulnerable and share that, maybe it's easy for me because I'm a Californian, I'm an American. A lot of you are British. You're like, don't talk to me about, feelings. I deal with that every day with my wonderful British mother. And I respect her, obviously. And I'm trying to be in relationship with her in a way that works best for us. And we have grown so much in the 20 years we've lived in a house together as grown women. And I still work hard on being who she deserves every day, and on getting what I need as well. So these are examples of what we can deduce, what we can feel brave enough to talk about when we're asked. And I think that's the point of the conversations I'm trying to engender.
And you talked about both vulnerability and bravery there. And first of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the bravery and vulnerability and honesty and joy that's coming up in the chat here. People have shared a lot of things about themselves all that time we've been talking, and I'm finding it very moving. And something's on my mind that seems to potentially join this, the power of this vulnerability, taking off our masks. And also what you were saying earlier about how we're often living to other people's expectations. It feels to me that we have this universal need to feel loved, to feel valued, to feel connected to something beyond just ourselves. And perhaps the reason we're not very vulnerable is we want to keep a mask on and keep up impressions, or the reason we spend a lot of our lives living to other people's expectations is just a desire to fit in, a desire to feel accepted. And yet, I think what you're showing us is that life becomes just that bit richer. We become more alive when we can let go of that sort of need to impress, and we actually become, in many ways, more lovable and more acceptable, being our true selves rather than being what others would want us to be. Is that making any sense to you?
100%, Mark. You just put it so beautifully, and some authors whose books are right over here are coming to mind. So I just want to give some shout outs to other writers whose work is, I think, really relevant. Brene Brown is the person I think of as our leader when it comes to accepting that we're imperfect, and that we feel shame around some things, that we feel fear. She leads us toward letting the shame out so that we can rid its grip on us. When we hold it all inside, then it controls us. And so the beautiful thing is to be able to let it out, not let it out like pour all of your, you know what, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast. I feel like I probably shouldn't. It feels very proper. Let all of your stuff out. You don't want to be constantly spilling all of your feelings everywhere, but we do want to find that balance between spill it all the time on everyone and don't ever share anything you're feeling. There's this beautiful sweet spot. The other book that's coming to mind is Normal Sucks by Jonathan Mooney. How to Live, Learn, and Thrive Outside the Lines. This is somebody who's talking about the fact that those of us who have differences from the so-called norm are beautiful and perfect, you know, as we are, that their normal is either doesn't exist or sucks, as he says. And it's a beautiful invitation to accept the various differences that you may have vis-a-vis other humans, and to really love that self and be
We're
that.
perfectly abnormal, all of us.
Right.
um, Julie, I want to get on to all the questions that are coming up from the audience in a moment, but we've talked mainly about your most recent book, but actually there's also a fascinating story I'd love us to delve briefly into around the first book you wrote, which was actually focused more on children, but I think is of great interest to people who, you know, through the lens of a parent, as I am myself. And actually your story of how you came into that way of thinking as a dean at a university, I think is fascinating. Maybe you'd like to share a little bit about that and how that links into this conversation.
Sure thing. So the book that we've been talking about, Your Turn, is actually a sequel, if you will, to the first one. The first one is How to Raise an Adult. This is Your Turn, How to Be an Adult. And this one emanated, as you've said, from my years as a dean at Stanford University out here in Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area. I was dean of first years. Okay, so my job was to give a damn about my first year students and try to help ensure that they all felt a sense of belonging to this magnificent, enormous place. And I would meet with them one-on-one. I would meet with them in small groups. I would meet with them as a whole, 1,700 of them. And I got to know them better as they aged. And in being terribly interested in their journey, I began to appreciate, and this would have been the early 2000s when this was happening. I was in that role I was at Stanford from 98 to 2012, and dean of first years from 2002 to 2012. So I was seeing, although these students were so accomplished in an academic sense, in an achievement, in a measurable achievement sense, too many of them, and a growing number every year, seemed to have parents who were coming along for the ride, wanting to register them for classes, wanting to argue with professors, wanting to have their own orientation session before their air quotes child could go study at Oxford, for example. And I thought, what is up, people? Come on. Why are you acting as if your own child is an infant? They could be in the army. They could be in the workplace. Instead, they're at university where there's a lot of safety net. Why are you acting like they're so incapable? And I would rail against this because I was rooting for my students to lead this one wild and precious life. And it's hard to really lead much of a life if other people are really leading you as if you're on their leash. And I would rail against this. I would give talks. I would tell parents kindly but bluntly, trust your kid, trust us, now please leave. And then, Mark, I came home one day and I sat down next to my own son. We were having dinner. My kids are now 22 and 20. But on this night, my son, who's now 22, was 10. And my daughter was 8. So I sit next to Sawyer at dinner. I've been in this role telling other people what to do with their kids now for years, 7 years. And I lean over Sawyer's plate and I begin cutting his meat. And that's when I realized the overparenting doesn't start at university. The overparenting is a failure starting at age 1 to realize I'm supposed to instill skills in this kid. My job as parent is to put myself out of a job to raise someone who will be more skilled, therefore more competent, therefore more confident, therefore more of a whole human every year, so that when they do go off, they know I've got this. The love doesn't end, but our dependency, the dependency on us, is gradually supposed to end. And so I realized, Mark, with horror, that I was one of those parents who would not be able to let go of my own child at 18 because I was cutting his meat when he was 10. And there are a whole lot of skills you got to learn between cut meat and go to the army or go to university. So this book is this very insistent, compassionate, clear book saying we are harming our kids when we overparent. Because at the university, in addition to just seeing the involvement of parents, we were also seeing the mental health consequences of somebody who's overly attended in life. They're more likely to have anxiety and depression, in addition to not being skilled. So in trying to elucidate, in trying to inform people about this problem, I became aware that I too was practicing the behavior. And so it made me that much more motivated to help us all.
Mm. Well, well done you. And as a parent myself, I can see that tendency, but I think it does link back to this amazing conversation we had earlier about each of us living our one wild and precious life, because I wonder what's going on there for some of the parents who, like me and perhaps like you as well, have done a bit of that helicopter parenting for our own children. Maybe it's that, again, we're feeling that we're not enough, that we need to somehow validate ourselves, be accepted through the success, in quotes, of our children, when in fact empowering them and letting them be themselves is actually a much bigger blessing to give them. Do you see these as related?
Absolutely. It's our love. We love our kids fiercely, as we should, and we always will. We're afraid of the world. There's a sense that the world is more dangerous than when our parents and grandparents were coming up, although there's a tremendous amount of evidence that says that's not true. The fact that our grandparents could go 5 miles from home on their bikes and our children aren't allowed beyond our eyesight is in response to this sort of fear that has been promulgated by media, and the fact that we know about every problem that happens in the world whenever it happens because of our 24/7, 365 media cycle and our smartphones. And so it's created this climate of fear, and parenting responds. So love and fear are 2 reasons why we overparent: tie their shoes too long, cut their meat too long, walk them across the street too long, but also our insecurities, our ego needs. In my community, in many communities in my country, I know in many communities in yours and around the world, we do treat our children as if they are the proof that we are good parents, good moms and dads, good people. And so we need to show others, look what I've done. Look at, like, the child is the trophy. Or the child is the project and their outcomes are the trophy that point to our worth. And this is harming our kids. It's harming our primary relationships. It's hard to have a healthy adult marriage, partnership, significant relationship or many, when your entire life is what is happening with my kid right now. So when we can take that step back to the side and say, hey, my kid has their life and I have mine, which includes having a child, but also I have relationships and work and hobbies and time for me. It's healthier for the kid and for us. And we end up modeling what a healthy adult life looks like instead of making our kids feel like, why would I ever want to be an adult? They seem so freaking stressed out of their minds all the time.
Mm. In a moment, I'm going to come to the Q&A. We've got some great questions already, folks. So please do put any questions you'd like to ask Julie. And also we have an upvote feature. So if you see another question you'd really like to see answered, please do vote up other people's questions as well, so we can see which ones are most popular. But before we do that, I mean, Julie, you encouraged all of us at the start of this conversation to sort of reflect on what's coming up for us. And I've been really moved seeing all of the comments in the chat and the kindness and the inspiration and the honesty that's coming up. Maybe we could pause again and just ask people to, like, if you'd be willing, folks, maybe share a little bit about what has been resonating for you. What's come up? What have you noticed yourself feeling and thinking in response to what Julie shared? Whether that's about these great ways that we can sort of tap into living more of our wild and precious life, or whether it's about how we relate to others, our children, our other relationships, how we bring a bit of this into the lives of others around us. What's been on your mind? So I see someone saying tightness in my chest about overparenting. Yeah, I certainly can resonate with that one. Don't let others limit you. I've realized my parents have overparented me. Someone's saying life matters, every day matters, just do it. I feel a release of the feeling that things need to be a certain way, no longer looking for approval from others, having space to be together. Yeah, parenting is hard. People being moved by your phrase about until your last breath. What are you seeing in the chat? What's striking a chord with
I'm
you,
seeing
Julie?
some people sharing hard things. I saw
Mm,
somebody say, it's hard to think of child as trophy when my child is contemplating suicide, or there was a mention of teen suicide. And I just want to say, some people are sharing some deeply personal things here. And this, given the format, it's hard for any one of us to pull you to the side and really sit with you. So if difficult stuff, really difficult stuff is coming up for you, first of all, that's valid. I'm glad you're sharing it to yourself and to us is really valuable. I encourage you to go find a space where you can unpack this further. When we are in crisis, we need therapists, we need physicians, we need support who are professionals at it. So I just hope, if you're hearing me right now and you're kind of like, yeah, I need to go talk to somebody, do follow up on that, please. I also want you to know that you see how stridently I speak. I'm a former lawyer. I'm used to using words and a certain way of being with words to have an impact. But I want you to also know that I am very much a human who's like so full of emotion and a willingness to be vulnerable. And I want you to know, parents, that I've shared with you that I was overparenting my son. It was well more than just cutting his meat. I want you to know I had patterns in place of overprotectiveness because I loved him and just wanted to sort of support him all along. And at 22 now, in the context of family therapy, which we just started a year ago, I have been able to be curious about what am I doing and how is it supporting or undermining this kid. I've been able to be humble. I've been able to interrogate the why for me. What are my insecurities such that I'm needing to micromanage my son or daughter? I've been able to acknowledge those things as they arise in the kitchen with my son or daughter. I've been able to say, I'm so sorry. I know I get really stressed about this. I'm working on it. It has nothing to do with you. I am doing my work. And my kids, in being able to apologize and acknowledge, my kids just light up and they say, oh, mom, no worries. I love you so much. Thank you for saying that. It's this vulnerability, this willingness to admit my own imperfections, as Brene Brown writes about, has brought me to a greater clarity around my parenting style and what I need to work on within myself. So I am actively trying to repattern some less than helpful patterns between me and my own kids, which is my way of saying, I'm in it with you. If you're resonating with this, I'm not judging you. I am in it. And it's never too late. It is never too late to improve a relationship, whether it's parent and child or to adults or what have you, it's never too late, and it is entirely worth it.
Thank you, Julie. Let's switch tack on a related theme, but from younger people to older people. A great question from Robin here. Hearing you say everyone matters brings my concerns about how we older people matter. How can we contribute even as our bodies and minds begin to slow?
Beautiful. Boy, has life expectancy changed? Think back to your own grandparents, and look at how long their generation lived compared to how long we are living now. And our kids are likely to, if they're under 20 now, they're very likely to live to 100, which is amazing. Number one, how you feel about your own self is the biggest thing, whatever your age. So try not to let any kind of perception that, well, I'm aging, my body, my mind, so therefore I'm less worthy. Try to catch yourself from making any self-judgment there. And instead reframe it as like, look at me, I'm this age. Look, I got this going on. Some things are, a little bit less strong than they were, but look what I can do. Look what I know. So that holding that self as validating the self is super important. And then I think I would get involved with organizations in your community that are seeking out advice and guidance of older people who know so much, mentoring younger people, older people, being in relationship with each other, to share, to teach one another. When a young person comes and helps you with X, Y, and Z technology, which I know happens in our house with my 82-year-old mother, we on the younger side have to lean into, and what can she teach me? I know that older folks are full of stories, and I think we younger folks, and myself very much included here, can do a better job of listening thoughtfully, telling ourselves, this person, I might have heard the story a few times before, but this person might not be around forever. And I'm sure as hell going to miss these stories when I no longer have access to them. So I think we younger set have to do a better job of recognizing the absolute treasures of all humans, and in particular, in response to this person, to recognize the treasure that is, that are our elders.
Well said. Clifford's asked an interesting question, and thank you, Clifford, because you often ask interesting questions on these events. Do you think kindness needs to be taught and learned rather than just left to evolve naturally?
Well, Clifford, kindness is so subtle that it's one of those things that I'm not sure we have an answer to that, because I'm not sure we know. I certainly am not a brain scientist. I'm not a scientist at all. So maybe somebody knows, but my curiosity here is, how do we know how kindness is imparted? How, I don't know how to answer that question. So I will answer it this way. I think there is something innate in us as humans. I know, I have read the work of scientists that makes clear that, and we all know this, we are social species. We need one another. We need the care and attention of one another. Kindness helps lubricate all of that. So we know that. But I think in addition to it being innate as a capacity and as a need, we can also get better at it. So that's why in my book, I talk about the various ways. I have a whole list of acts of kindness. In my superpowers chapter, I say, unleash your superpowers: mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude. I think these three things are like our seeds embedded in us, and we can grow them with a little bit of attention to them. So I have lists of kind acts. I think it can be taught, but it is also innate.
I agree. And I find myself, I had the great pleasure of hosting one of our events with the Dalai Lama recently, who's the patron of Action for Happiness. And a question was asked to him by someone in our community about, I can't remember what the question was, but it led to him speaking about, children are sort of born with an innate sort of altruistic nature. And then later that day, I was reminded of how unkind my own children can sometimes be to themselves, and particularly to each other and to siblings, and thinking, well, yes, there may be an innate nature, but there's also a lot of unkindness that comes up naturally in human nature. And I think, therefore, what you said, both those things are true. But actually, by cultivating more of an encouragement to be kind and to model that in our lives. And that this ripple effect you talked about really is real. And actually, by practicing kindness, we also help others both see it, recognize it, and practice it more as well. So I'm really glad you made that point.
I have a story for you with my son to this point. They're 2 years apart, as I've said. Let's say Sawyer was 11 and Avery was 9. And he had been a wonderful older brother when she was little. They started to get into a little bit of sibling, nothing terrible, but just a little bit of back and forth when they were like 7 and 5. And so now we're in that phase. He's 11, she's 9. And one day after I had come home from work, we were all sort of having dinner, something like that, before bedtime, he was mean to her. And my instinct was to protect Avery. I mean, we attended to that, like, Avery, are you all right? Oh my goodness. He didn't physically harm her, but he was unkind. But my instinct was, this is not my son's normal. So I had recently read the phrase, hurt people hurt people. Those who are hurt others. Kids who bully other kids are likely being hurt at home. Kids who harm animals are likely being hurt by humans. Now, my son hadn't done anything on those lines, but he was uncharacteristically mean that day. So after attending to my daughter for a moment, I turned to my son and I said, Sawyer, was somebody mean to you today? And he just looked at me like I had peered into his soul. And he said, yeah. And so then we had this family conversation about how that can happen, that when you have been harmed, it can make you less kind to others. Okay. So I was like, good job. I'm a great parent. Blah, blah, blah. A couple of years later, I come home from work and I'm bitchy. I'm just not making eye contact and I'm just slamming things around. And Sawyer looks at me with the most tender face. And he says, Mom, was somebody mean to you today?
Huh.
And I just looked at him the same way he had looked at me. And I said, yeah. Yeah. And thank you for letting me know that I'm behaving in ways that are harming others. And you're inviting me to be loving to myself around, why am I off my spot? Let me address that. Let me process my feelings about the stuff that happened at work today. Let me validate that. That happened. That felt awful. Okay, let's move on. And then I can bring the kind self that is my set point to my family. My point here is, when people are mean, there's a reason. Something's gone wrong. And as parents and as educators and friends, if we can be big enough to be interested in their why, that's when we really start to level up as a human society.
That's so powerful. I'm really moved hearing that. And I think that if we could bring more of that spirit into all of the ways in which we lack harmony in our world, all the different sort of in-groups and out-groups, I think it would make a huge difference. But it also bridges to a difficult, but I think really important question from Peter here. It just says, Julie, how do you speak to racists and misogynists? I mean, you've talked very passionately about, the importance of diversity and inclusion in your life and your own personal journey and experience. But it's, this is a really seems very timely but hard question. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Peter. 3 things. Number 1, I have been on a journey from self-loathing. I was taught that as a Black, brown-skinned person in America that I was not deserving of dignity and kindness. I was called the N-word and ashamed to be the person who was called the N-word. And even though I was outwardly successful, I really was coming from a place of self-loathing, just trying to please white folks. I wrote an entire book on it. We've talked about my 3rd book and my 1st book. My middle book is Real American. I'm saying, ain't I a real American? Yes, I am. And my journey around dealing with racism and microaggressions is very much the focus of this book. Ultimately, I get to this place of profound self-love. And if anyone's interested in that, whether on the basis of race or sexual orientation or gender or any background identity you carry, check out that book. Number 2, when George Floyd was murdered, I cocooned. I stopped engaging with all of the stuff out here and just looked for safe spaces where nobody would say, well, what was he doing? Or are you sure? Or don't you want to give them the benefit? No, I needed to be in Black spaces. I needed to be in spaces of solidarity and allyship because the wound was so painful. I am 18 months late, or close to 18 months later, I am emerging from that cocoon back out into the space of engaging with people who feel differently. I'm very active on social, and I will sometimes comment in a very public way, and people I don't know will pile on and say things. And I'm as a practice, what am I working on? A practice of when somebody says something unkind, I will just try to get to I'll say, what is it you're trying to say here, Rob? Rob, actually, I disagree. I'm trying to be very civil and cordial. I'm trying to show I will engage. You have not pushed me into hiding. I am here, and you're going to have to engage me. And that's a practice that I'm just getting underway. And sometimes it makes me want to flinch and not look at social, but I'm trying, because I know that change happens when we can actually talk across differences, and that's essential. I look to the work of Irshad Manji on this. Don't label me. She is the founder of the Moral Courage Project at NYU, New York University. She is, I think, our leader on how to have these impossible conversations. You can check out her website. There are video examples of how to have tough conversations with people with whom you disagree.
It's such a rare privilege to see someone who knows their own bookshelves so well. People often comment on this colourful array behind me, which I can't take any credit for because my daughter arranged them, but it means I'm much less able to find things than you are, which is great. Thank you for that really powerful answer to an important question. And it's lovely to have a chance to refer to that other book that you've written on this topic. Let's come back as we move towards a close to sort of more general advice on your central message, I think, which has been about let's work on the things that really matter to be our true selves, to kind of make the most of this one life. Ella's asked a really interesting question. If you have loads of things you want to work on, how do you focus or prioritize?
Ella, thanks for the question. I would write it out in my journal. I'd make a list somewhere, your phone, a piece of paper, whatever works for you. And I would ask yourself this question. I would come up with some kind of rubric about, what are the things that I want to do, and let me prioritize, what's my why. It's good for my page, it'll be good for my income. It'll be good for my sense of well-being. It'll be, it's one of those bucket list things I've always wanted. Is it career related or personal? Like, come up with some categories and give yourself a rating to just try to get some data out of, these feelings, and it's just an analysis you're doing for yourself. There's no right or wrong to it, but you're trying to tease out a bit more information. And also ask yourself, what's practical right now? Practical matters. Two more books coming to mind. Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans at the Stanford Design School. It is an amazing book. And these guys teach a class in designing your life. This book is full of practical lists you make and things you do. These guys are the international experts on how do you take all those options and make sense of them. And there's a new book coming out from Michael Bengay-Stanier, a British guy. I think he's British. He has a new book coming out called How to Begin. I just blurbed it. It's not available yet, but when it is just literally how to decide to take that next big step and the ways you have to evaluate your options. So look for How to Begin by MBS. He goes by MBS, Michael Bengay-Stanier. And then Designing Your Life, international bestseller. You can get this now in every format.
Somebody, I think Fahar in the chat, has said we need a Julie book club, because you were doing all these great book recommendations. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Sort of related, but looking back at this point you were making about how we often we're living lives based on other people's expectations of us for all kinds of reasons, whether it's our parents or our peers or media and society expectations. Walter's just asked simply, how do you cope with others' expectations, especially if they don't agree with what it is you're trying to move towards?
Yeah. So if you're a kid at home with your parents, it's harder because they're likely paying for the rent and the food and all of that. You have less agency when you are a child being cared for by others. The older we get, the more in charge of ourselves we want to be. We should be getting work that allows us to rent a place, buy a place, whatever, right? Pay our own way. That gives us more agency. Okay. Regardless, though, you can have conversations with somebody. I have a 5-step method for these conversations. First, you say to them, I'd like to have a conversation tonight or this weekend. Can we set a time? That's going to frighten them. They're going to be like, what? And that's good. You kind of want them a little bit on the defense. They'll say yes. Then you're in the conversation and you frame the topic. I'd like to talk with you about X, what I want to do for a living, what I want to study in school, who I'm dating, whatever the topic is. You frame it and you say, I'd like to hear your thoughts. And oh no, I'm sorry. I missed the crucial second step. The first step is ask. The second step is you're in the conversation. You open it with respect, whatever language of respect you have with these people, whether it's I love you and I know you love me, or if you don't use that language with these people, you could say, I respect you. I appreciate you. You've instilled a lot of great values in me. You're creating a container in which the conversation can be held. Step 3, you frame the topic. I want to talk with you about X and I want to hear your thoughts. Step 4, they share their thoughts and you actively listen back without defensiveness. Let me see if I'm getting this. I'm understanding you're saying, have I missed anything? So they feel heard. Step 5, you finally get to say what has been on your mind in shaping this whole conversation in the first place. Here's what I think. And you offer your thoughts. And if they push back, then you can say, look, I know you may not understand who I am or this choice or why, but I hope you love me enough to support me as I do it. It's a way of saying, I'm going to do this. It's not up to you, but I really would appreciate your support.
Julie, sadly, we're rapidly running out of time, and this has been such a wonderful conversation, but I know the audience would really appreciate hearing a bit more about how they can follow you, find out more about your work, get involved. Would you like to share some of the ways that we can keep this going beyond tonight?
Absolutely. And whatever time zone you're in, we're so grateful that you've spent this time with us.
Absolutely.
Let me just share my screen because that's where you'll see, this is my contact info, my website, and my social handles are all the same, J Lythcott-Haims, wherever you might find yourself on social. I'm also on TikTok and Clubhouse, sort of. But I'm J Lythcott-Haims everywhere. And this is a QR code for the book if you're interested, the main book, the new book that we've been discussing. So there's my website, Julie Lythcott-Haims. So yes, please do find me. I love to engage on social with folks around this stuff. I have this new thing called Julie's Pod, which is an online space. It's Julie's Pod, and I write weekly, but also have confidential phone calls, 1-877 hi Julie. Let's pop that in the chat. Anyone who wants to, I'm slightly afraid with all of these people, I'm going to hear from hundreds, but this is a way to leave me a confidential message about what's on your mind. And then I do a roundup. I share it out on social media, not mentioning your name, but just mentioning the topics, because we all feel less alone when we hear what's on other people's minds. So I've got a phone number, website, just come find me. I'm here.
We're going to share all of those links in the follow-up email that will go out to everyone tomorrow. And we'll send a copy of the chat from this evening and also a video so people can watch this again. I would love to say, well, first of all, thank you to everyone who posted great questions, and sorry to Marguerite and Robin and Bridget and Janet and others who've had wonderful questions that we haven't had time to get round to as well. And very grateful to everyone who's made a small donation to our Action for Happiness charity to help us continue to put on these events. But above all, most grateful to you, Julie, for being here this evening. As we leave, is there a final thought you'd like to leave us all with?
You matter. Whatever came up for you in this conversation matters. Take it forward. Be curious. This is your one wild and precious life, and I'm so excited for you to lead it.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's been a really special time together. See you next time.